Hello, and welcome to the Climbing Majority podcast. In today's episode, we'll be having a discussion with Eric. Eric is a personal trainer, entrepreneur, and health coach who resides in Reno, Nevada. He focuses on the 4 fundamentals of health: sleep, food, movement, and connection to breath. In tandem with these 4 fundamentals with some of his clients, Eric likes to use micro or sub-perceptual doses of psilocybin mushrooms. He does so to downregulate the default mode network in his clients' brains to create new neural pathways. Despite well-established medical applications for psilocybin mushrooms, they still remain widely illegal in many parts of the globe. Please use drugs safely and responsibly, and if you have any questions or concerns, seek out a professional who can guide you through this process if this is something you're interested in doing. So with that in mind, I present to you our conversation with Eric.
All right, we are live. Ba-bam. Woo!
Sweet.
Nice. All right, Max, this is Eric. Eric, this is Max.
Pleasure to meet you, Eric.
Hey, guys. I don't have a cool intro sound. I don't know.
It's all good. We'll do that in post.
That was cool.
I met Eric at the climbing gym, Mesa Rim here in Reno, my favorite climbing gym on the planet. The reason why I moved to Reno. And yeah, I was just kind of at the gym. I saw Eric standing there and I just took one look at him. I was like, that guy is a guy I need to know. I was just like, this is someone who's going to have something to say. So we met in the sauna with a bunch of other people. The vibe of the sauna was pretty rough. People were complaining and just kind of having negative energy. And I loved what Eric said. He's like, do you guys ever just focus on your breath? And I was just like, hell yeah, this guy's fucking cool. and they're like, no. And I like immediately took the opportunity and I was just like, yo. So I started a conversation with them and, we ended up talking more than they were, but about really cool stuff and just talking about, energies and the consciousness and psychedelics. And it just was a really cool conversation. And I wanted to kind of give it a little bit more of a professional platform. I feel like there's a lot to talk about today, and it's just a really cool topic. Psilocybin specifically is what we're going to be talking about today. Magic mushrooms, however you want to call it. And I think we all have a little bit of experience in this world. I think Eric is going to be topping us with that experience and the knowledge. So he's definitely here to just join the discussion. So definitely excited about it.
Eric, I got a question for you. So in the sauna, when you were asking them if they ever just focus on their breath, were you trying to bestow wisdom of meditation and mindfulness on them? Man. Or was that like a really polite, like, you guys need to shut up?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. Took the opportunity to ask a question because we gotta ask questions. And that was like a moment to bring some wisdom to it, maybe some awareness. Yeah, change the energy a little bit. Yeah.
It was necessary, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as from my perspective here, like, I've never met you, Eric, so this is like the first time meeting and everything like that. And obviously for anybody who's listening, why don't you just like give us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you're here to do today.
Holy guacamole. 32 years old. I have an autoimmune disease. I'm completely hairless. That's a big part of the health journey that I've been on and how I got here. And specifically talking about mushrooms and psilocybin, how that all intertwines. It's that's a little bit more in depth. But that's the short version. Autoimmune disease, grew up very sick, and now I'm very passionate about sharing health wisdom, helping others heal, healing myself, finding all the healing modalities that are out there, including the mushrooms and plant medicine, and the physical health and climbing and all the attributes of health.
Where did you grow up?
Redding, California, and Reno was kind of my second home, and so kind of going back and forth between Reno and Redding. Yeah,
nice. When you don't mind me asking, what autoimmune disease have you been dealing with, and when did you notice it kind of start to have an effect on your life?
Yeah, so I've had an autoimmune disease my whole life. It's alopecia areata. Just don't grow any hair, completely hairless. I've had it my whole life, but it kicked in to full gear when I was a freshman in high school. Over the course of 7 days, I lost my entire head of hair.
Wow.
And came back from Christmas break, just a little mutant child in high school, just looking completely different.
Wow.
And wore a hat after that to cover up my shame and my weird head for probably about 10, 14 days. And then a big shift happened for me, and I shed the hat and I just owned it, and it became a superpower ever since.
2 weeks it took you to do that?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Lots of hiding.
Yeah.
But I finally just let it out.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that's such an interesting, like, tumultuous time in your life to go through that. You know what I mean? I feel like there's like a million Hollywood movies where they have like most ridiculous depictions of high school ever. But that would be, an interesting and really difficult time to be dealing with that particularly. Right? So
it was cool. It was a cool
and
moment.
So are there with the autoimmune aspect to it, like, out of curiosity, are you like more compromised from COVID or anything like that? Is that something that is
what's COVID? No, I'm just kidding. So technically speaking, I don't even know how to answer that. I technically was in the more compromised percentile or group of people or whatever, but I actually think about it differently. So because my autoimmune disease actually creates a hyperimmune response, I'm actually consider myself more protected to a certain degree because my immune system is so active all the time, to the point where it attacks my own hair. So I'm kind of, I look at it as a superpower and more of like, I'm extra protected. I'm really trained up with fighting things off.
I think this is something we talked about recently in the last podcast is just, when you have these kind of circumstances where you don't have a lot of control, you can kind of make up what you want it to be. Like you have the power and you have the choice to decide what kind of life you're going through. And I think it's such an awesome way to think about your situation. Like 2 weeks in, you're just like, hell no, this is a superpower. And like, I'm just going to see this in the most positive way. And I'm sure that, because of that mindset, it has become what you have manifested it to become. So I think it's really, really cool power of mindset and positivity, and definitely vibe with that. So it's really cool to really
the power of choice is everything. Power of choice and your choice and your intention and the story you're telling yourself is almost more powerful than the quote unquote reality that's in front of you.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely true. Well, to be diving into that, that's for sure.
Yeah. all of our lives are dictated by a series of stories that we make up and that we use to essentially operate and perceive that is our reality. Mm-hmm. So it's not very objective, right? And you do have control over what stories you're going to listen to and what stories you want to take information from. Yeah. So I think. And I mean, obviously, there's caveats to that. There are some people who just live in drastically unfortunate situations. Yeah. But still, even when you're dealt the absolute worst hand and the worst deck,
the answer is still the same.
Your mindset, the answer is still the same. Like you might be worse off, and it might be really unfortunate, and the world dealt you a terrible deck. But ultimately, like you could be in that situation with a terrible mindset, or you could be in that situation with trying to work on your mindset and mindfulness.
Just like climbing,
the ladder's always going to be
it's a muscle. It's a muscle, and it's like you could give someone different levels of circumstances, but it's like how strong is your mindset in that moment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure. So, what's your like background in climbing? Like when did you start climbing?
I'm not an insanely advanced climber by any way, but I've been climbing since I moved to Reno. I don't know how long you have you been here. Rock Sport? You remember Rock Sport?
No, I moved here in June.
Okay, yeah. So one of the original rock climbing gyms was this dinky little thing in a corner of a mall spot, and I started climbing there because of a girl, obviously, and me and my buddy started going all the time and started bouldering. And yeah, and so I've been climbing for probably about 5 years now.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Is this girl still in your life?
Oh no, not at all. no, not at all. Not even.
climbing last.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So, I mean, let's just, for our audience here, this is something I'm always interested in. How, maybe you've been climbing 5 years. If you want to give us just a quick rundown of technicals, like your kind of climbing grade levels, like where are you comfortable red pointing, on-sighting, or do you have any trad experience? Just kind of give someone a little bit of a taste of who you are as a climber.
Oh man. Again, not that advanced. What do I climb? I don't know. 5'10s, 5'11s. I don't think I've done any like outdoor 12s. I think I've trad climb one time. I think I've cleaned a route. Yeah, so nice. I'm more of the recreational guy. Yeah, have fun and enjoy it. And I mean, we live in a great area, for this stuff. But I recreational. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I think Max and I think Max and I could take a lesson from Eric.
Yeah.
I think that's the majority of climbers anyways, right? The majority of people just want to enjoy the sport and have fun and get out there, meet girls, go to the gym, be healthy, So, I mean, and that's part of who we're talking to in this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
and to elaborate a little bit, I'm really passionate about movement. And so what attracted me to climbing originally was that movement culture, those shapes, the positions. It's like, what the hell is a heel hook? And, and it's like the movement ability. I've always been quite flexible. And so people told me I would be a good climber. And so it's that movement aspect that pulled me into the sport.
I can relate with that for sure. Yeah. Max?
Did you do any sports growing up? Like, was there a particular sport that you liked, or did you dance, or whatever your thing was?
Oh, man, what didn't I do? Frisbee golf. I was a tournament ping pong player. I was a state bowler. I bowled in state tournaments all over the place. I played basketball. Basketball was a big one. Gosh, it's all the weird random sports. I golfed a lot. Yeah.
I love it. This is just completely surpassed whatever expectation. I thought you were going to be like, oh, I swam and ran track or something. It was like way better than I could have imagined.
Everyone always says like, hey, you're hairless. Are you hairless because you're a swimmer? And I'm like, no, I flop around in the water. I'm not like, I'm aerodynamic, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, he told me he was a bowler, and I was just like, "Oh yeah." I spent
super cool.
In college, I would spend hours in the bowling alley that we had on campus. I love bowling.
Yeah,
I can never get anybody to go with, so I'm glad I've got someone who knows how to bowl.
You got someone now. I miss it. Yeah, so like just all movement, right? Movement practices, and as I got older, I got really passionate about CrossFit. And I was into CrossFit for a while. I ran Spartans, a little bit of jujitsu in there. And then more recently, I do dance a little bit, but it's not choreographed or anything. So, and then I'm a big practitioner of like Ido Portal and movement and animal flow and all the other guys, MoveNat. And so, yeah, it's all movement based for me. And climbing is movement within that structured form, and structure to, use loosely.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually familiar with Ido Portal. I've seen like quite a few of his videos and stuff. It's really, really cool and elegant, and definitely like his aspect of like, today with the way the fitness industry is going and how we're reverse engineering our bodies, we're not trying to strive for like functionality and movement first. Like people are just like focused on aesthetics and weight loss and all these things. And what we really need to be striving for is like the functionality of the body.
For sure.
Like we want things to work well. Right. Yeah. Like that's supposed to be goal number one. Super cool.
We talked about this. This is something we talked about with Asana, is just the coach's eye or the athlete's eye looking around, and just like 90% of the people just having horrible motor mechanics, bent in knees, touching each other, super tight psoas, lower back pain. It's just like so visibly obvious that most of the population has just really poor motor mechanics. And along with so many other things, it's just like seems like one of those things that everyone should know. It's like know how to use your body, know how to run around and do it in a healthy way instead of getting sick and injured, but can't make money off that. So I guess it's a secret.
Seriously, right? Yeah, one of my favorite things to do is just be in a line at like the DMV or the bank or Walgreens or something, and just be on the floor doing squat mobility in line, just
Nice.
opening up the hips. Everyone's like, "What is wrong with that guy?"
Yeah, it's funny how like that seems like a bizarre thing to do, but like why not?
Yeah.
What else are you doing
Probably
while
the
you're waiting
healthiest
there,
thing
right?
to
Like,
do. Yeah.
I work at like a outdoor retailer part time, and I'll do that. Like when I'm not like busy or doing something or helping someone, it's like just every couple minutes, an hour, just pop down, do some stretching, get the mobility in, move around, and yeah, like why not?
Yeah,
So, totally. What do you do for work, Eric?
Oh man, these are so simple yet so hard of questions. I kind of help a couple companies do online sales for certain kind of programs, kind of like self-help, self-optimization programs. I run my own little health coaching program. I have some like clients come through that. I have a couple other entrepreneurial adventures that pull in some cash. The past couple of years of my life has really been focused on multiple streams of income and not to kind of like pigeonhole the whole, 40-hour work week or like 9 to 5 kind of style, but, pull income and find sources from here and there and do it from coaching and a bunch of other things and little projects and all the things that are passion driven. Yeah.
And so how did you get into that? Was that just something that you were really like sparked and you're a total go-getter? Do you have like a mentor? What's kind of the process of how you initiated and got into that kind of realm?
It kind of stemmed from CrossFit and coaching. I was a personal trainer for many years. I've been a health coach for about 5-6 years now. Same with personal training. And it was always structured out of gyms and stuff like that, and group training dynamics a lot. I was a sales manager at a gym for a couple of years. And that just kind of turned into like, I have a skill set. I have my own intrinsic ability to help people. And let's kind of box that up into a way that we can help the most people in the most way and also create a powerful business model of that. I guess is an interesting answer. How to answer that? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I like to help people.
No, it's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think
it's totally awesome. Yeah.
The freedom of lifestyle and schedule, I think, is a big what's the word I'm looking for? Something that inspires me for those kind of entrepreneurial tasks as well. Just kind of running your own life instead of asking someone to give you money. Trying to generate it for yourself and offering something genuine in return is a really cool thing to strive for.
Yeah.
So when you say you do health coaching, obviously that's a broad topic, you could say, of what is encompassed in health. So what does that entail for like a day in the life?
Yeah, totally. It's a very broad term. And I'll kind of narrow it down a touch. I basically focus on the 4 fundamentals of health: sleep, food, movement, and connection to breath. And then I kind of like stem those 4 into each individual's approach. But really we can do all the work from those 4. And then I'm also a microdosing coach. So I kind of help people integrate medicine journeys and use intention-based coaching with microdosing plant medicines to create shifts in their day-to-day life.
Really, really cool, really interesting. Yeah. And so when you're saying like plant medicines, what does that encompass?
Specifically, generally? I have my clients work with psilocybin. Yeah. So okay. Small microdoses between the ranges of 100 milligrams upwards of 300 milligrams of specifically psilocybin blended with some other medicinal mushrooms. Interesting. Yeah. And then so they acquire, ingest with their own safety on their own accord. And then I help guide and integrate and work on shifting what they want to shift. Intention-based coaching is basically what is the client's intention, and how can a coach's perspective help accomplish that?
It's awesome. I think it's
and so with these kind of doses, you're saying about 100 to 300 milligrams,
correct?
And so is that the type of dose that someone is going to have like some kind of a really influential, like magical experience, or is this more of like a subtle in the background kind of experience when you say microdosing?
Yeah.
Just to clarify,
yeah,
for someone who doesn't really know much.
Yeah, micro means micro, so definitely on a smaller scale. And another way I like to put it is sub-perceptual. So I kind of also, there's like if you think of it as like a pane of energy glass, that's kind of like dissecting the back of your head. The energy is like way behind you. And as it becomes more perceptual, it kind of becomes in front of your vision, and then it's in front of you. So the macro doses is where you're going to have a mystical experience, anything kind of over that threshold of like 1.2 grams. And so the microdoses is going to be a sub-perceptual, energetic kind of cushion or cloud that's supporting you for the day, for the week, for the month.
It's a really cool way to conceptualize it. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that. I was like, that was the greatest description I've ever heard of micro to macro dosing mushrooms.
Yeah. So because it starts back there.
Yeah.
And you kind of, like on the lower doses, you kind of like look behind you. And you're like, what's going on here? Like, I feel warm and fuzzy, and it kind of creeps up and comes into the peripherals. And yeah, I've always liked to explain it that way.
I want to dive a little bit more into kind of like just a basic understanding of what shrooms are and why, Eric, you think they exist on the planet to begin with. If you just want to kind of help us here and maybe just give us kind of a broad description of shrooms and kind of,
I was thinking about this earlier, and my intuition, it's a very intuitive answer, but I like to take it back to the mycelium network and more looking at the whole fungus kingdom rather than necessarily shrooms or magic mushrooms or a certain strain of psilocybin. And the fungal network is here to communicate with all plants and to connect with all the trees and to be able to, it's the mycelium network. It is everything. And have you seen Fantastic Fungi?
No, but have you listened to Radiolab?
No, I've heard of that though.
That podcast is legit. Anybody who hasn't heard of it, check out Radiolab. They talk about this on an episode. We can put the link in the description. They literally talk about this network he's talking about that is under the ground. And it is literally how all plants communicate and also transmute nutrients between each other.
Yeah, to save each other.
It's that's how they're all connected. Without the fungus, the plants would not be able to do everything that they do. So it's totally a really cool thing. We'll put the link in the description. You guys can understand what he's talking about on a deeper level. But please take it away. You're
so like
on a great track here.
That's I mean, so like a real overarching way, like why are they here? That's why. But then it's like, if we want to dive into strains, if the fungus kingdom is here for that reason, why are there psilocybin strains? And then that gets into a whole other question of like the mystical experience and what they're trying to communicate with us or what wisdom they have. So it really opens up more questions than answers.
Yeah, it's actually a really cool point. Fungus is used to communicate between plants. Now we have this strain of fungus that is affecting us. It poses the question, like, what is it trying to connect us to? What's on the other side of this experience, and why is it here for us? Because it's not man-made, came from the ground. This is something that Earth, God, whatever you want to say, has created for us, and there must be a reason for it. So I just want to kind of dive into that today.
Yeah, I think that's what the psychonauts are trying to find out. That's the question. That's the question.
For sure. Have you ever heard of the stoned ape theory?
Eric? That's a good one. I have not. I can get behind it.
It's pretty cool.
I can get behind that.
Inform me. I have no idea what this is.
It's about like accrediting part of our evolution when we were primates or whatever to consuming like psychedelic mushrooms or psilocybin, helping to expand the brain it's very, it's not proven through anthropology or anything like that. It's simply just a theory, but it's really cool. And yeah,
that was Terrence McKenna. Terrence McKenna kind of started that whole thing, and I love it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I advanced as a human with some of my psychedelic experiences. I opened my mind. Like, we'll dive into this a little later with our personal experiences with it, but I for sure resonate with that theory. And I think that, if we came across these substances back in the day, I think it would have done nothing but expand our mind. I don't think there's anything else that could have happened.
Yeah, it's with how it interacts. With how it interacts in the brain, there's no other option than to have.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that was really, really cool how you were talking about the fungal network and how it's based in communication in, the forest or the plant world, you could say. And then, I guess it was kind of like inferring that, psychedelic mushrooms are essentially there to communicate with us, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So I think that's a really, really cool way of looking at that and perceiving that. And yeah, just really interesting to think about. So, but yeah, so I guess like if, we're on that topic then, so what do you do specifically with mushrooms with your clients?
So one of the most fascinating aspects of what this medicine does, in my opinion, was it's really effective. It is really effective at down-regulating the default mode network within the brain, which is essentially the ego. So the default mode network is the stories we tell ourselves, our belief systems, how we interact with the world, the story of I. And so what we do is we utilize the medicine and the downregulation of the default mode network to create new neural pathways with the intentions and the practices that you want to set forth and put forth and put energy into your life. So a lot of it has to do with anxiety or depression, smoking cessation, addiction, any sort of flow state, creativity, writer's block. I've had a couple of those clients. And so it's breaking down the old stories and inserting new stories, new neural networks to create things that you want to call into your life.
Yeah, it's a great description. Really super well said. For me, like my understanding of kind of the psychedelic experience, has been just exactly that. And the way I always described it to people is, in our mind, we have the conscious mind and we have the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is what we make decisions. It's how we think analytically. And the subconscious mind is always active, always there in the background, and usually kind of working unaware to the conscious mind. And that's where a lot of, our entire personality comes from. It's where the root of our decisions comes from. And we are unaware of a lot of the things going on usually. And so what I found is when you are taking, having a psychedelic experience, the psilocybin removes the veil of the conscious mind and allows you to communicate with like that subconscious part of your brain directly, without that wall or without that barrier kind of in the way, kind of mulling all those thoughts in your mind. So that's kind of like my understanding of it has always been just that direct connection to that subconscious, and your true identity lies there, and like all your demons lie there. That's why I think some people can have like a bad time, is if they're suppressing stuff with their conscious mind all the time and suppressing. When you remove that veil and you no longer are able to suppress anything anymore, you are there to deal with all these things that are there. And it's super healthy, but it can be kind of a jarring experience for someone who's not had a lot of time communicating with that other part of their brain.
And that's why dose is so important.
Mm-hmm.
That's why dose is very important. And that's why we always say start with less. And that's what's really, really, really cool about the up and coming world of microdoses is now someone can take 0.6, 0.8, less than a gram, instead of being handed a bag of mushrooms and say, have a good time. It's like, hey, today's therapeutic dose is going to be 1.2 grams of this mushroom strain at this potency, blended with these other supplements, X, Y, and Z. So we're coming into a world where we should I'll start eliminating these negative experiences due to more education being on the platform.
Yeah, it's kind of making this whole treatment into a science as it should.
Yeah.
So I think back to those negative experiences, because obviously, like, if you're going through chronology of our history, 50s, 60s, all these things, there's a lot of bad perceptions about psychedelics or things that can go wrong or things that can happen. And I think there's obviously a huge amount of misconceptions regarding that. So as far as my knowledge, I think that psilocybin actually tends to be a very, very safe thing. I don't really know of anybody like overdosing from psilocybin and like having like death in that aspect. I could be wrong, but I've never heard of that. And I think back to what you were saying about, from a more standardized and medical approach with incrementally increasing a dose, and also making sure that the environment is right, right? Like if you have a nice positive environment, you have a health coach, you have an experienced or knowledgeable individual, you're with people you trust, you feel safe, and back to that, not just grab a handful out of the party bag or whatever, you know that you are building up to, what it would be a tolerable or a good therapeutic dose, then you definitely remove a lot of those possibilities to have any type of, bad experience. And obviously this would be more so back to that window pane, in experience where the window pane is in the front in the macro context. Because from a micro context, like I've microdosed mushrooms a lot, and there's you don't get any kind
negative,
of psychedelic experience that's going to cause you like anxiety or some kind of distress. Right?
So. And so two things to that. It's what you described earlier, set and setting. So the set is that state of mind that you bring to the experience, and the setting is your actual environment, your physical environment around you. So if you have good set and setting and drop into a good space, then it's a lot less likely to have a detrimental experience.
Yeah. So let's talk about this real quick. Just both the role of intention, both in a psychedelic trip and also kind of in our lives, and also kind of with that intention, what you would describe as the proper way to experiment with psilocybin.
Yeah, intention. Like outside of the world of mushrooms, intention is really powerful, because what one of the practices you could do is having an intention for everything. Like, let's just swing into the extreme here. Mm-hmm. Like I have the intention to put my hands together. I have the intention to say the exact next word that I'm going to say. So intention can be really taken to the extreme, and it's really powerful because it brings in mindfulness, and we're not living in that autopilot, that subconscious that you talked about earlier. Yeah. And having that awareness is kind of like all intertwined with intention. And so bringing the intention into the medicine is really powerful. How do I vocalize it? It's just because
give us an example of what someone's intention might be going into a psychedelic experience.
Like more of the macro side?
Kind of, yeah. Like setting an intention. Like for me personally, when I go into a trip, I usually before, like either the night before or the day of, I set an intention in my mind. Like, what am I going to try to get out of this trip today? Like, is it going to be, is it just strictly fun? Am I trying to have some laughs with a friend? Is it just purely for like energetic release? Or am I trying to dive deep? Am I alone? Like, am I trying to answer some questions in my head? Am I trying to expand the way I'm thinking about a specific thing in my life or a specific event that occurred? I think that the more specific you are with kind of what you want to get out of it, you'll get those things out of it. And the less you go into it with, the more random it can get and the less purposeful it can become.
Yeah. And so just to play devil's advocate there, I really truly believe you will always get what you get out of it. And it's always going to be perfect, right? So it's kind of funny because we could totally throw intention out the window and be like, yeah, that's whatever happened was the intention. Uh-huh. But anyways, that's like, there's a lot of meta thinking there, because yeah, you could totally go into it. And for instance, I kind of look at two avenues and then they kind of branch off from there. And it's either focused on light and love or shadow work. And so that's kind of my avenues. And if I choose to go down light and love and like just set that intention, then that, spider webs out into a bunch of other light and love kind of things, very giggly, very free flowing, flow state, juggling movement. But if it's like shadow work, kind of like what you talked about, as far as doing the deep work or a solo trip or, I have something I need to heal, mushrooms for me is, personally, it's my emotional body. So I'm not a very emotional male, and I appreciate things that pull that out in me. It's very hard for me, and to have that release. And I love a good cry, but it's so hard for me to do and get to. So my intention with mushrooms is almost always allowing to feel my feelings and cry at the beauty, cry at the sadness, cry at my growth, cry at the healing and the pain of other people, and have that emotional response. Some of the most, it's funny. I just thought of a story that I hadn't thought about today. I've been trying to think about cool stories all day, and now one popped in my head. But just insane emotional releases. And so that's kind of always my underlying intention now of I'm taking medicine that's going to be heart opening, and it's going to move things through my body, and I'm going to be able to heal and have a release through feeling these emotions, because that medicine allows that to happen.
That's powerful. That's awesome. Max, what's your experience with intention? And
you have a good cry, Max?
Yeah,
you did cry, baby?
I mean, I could completely resonate with that. I've definitely had, I've had good cries. I've had some bad cries, and I think back to intention on some level. Yeah. Like the intention you set can be really important. I think mindset, maybe we're just like conflating the things, but if you're going in there and you're, feeling hypersensitive and you're really stressed out and you didn't, do your chores or the washing machine or, whatever, you got to still walk your dog. Like, all of these things that are, external factors that are now going to influence you when you're in this state. But if you have once again, gone to those correct places and you're with the correct people and just the stars have aligned, right? And then you have that intention set. That's just setting yourself up for success, to have a really good experience and to be able to allow yourself to just feel what you're going to feel, because I think that setting can definitely really influence the experience you're having. So, if you take a macro dose of mushrooms and you end up getting really high and you have all this anxiety about this test you haven't been studying for, whatever thing that's happened, like that can really possibly manifest itself, and it might not be great.
Yeah.
So I definitely think those things play a role, and I think that you can 100% influence yourself to having a really good experience, because so many people have so many unbelievable, amazing, life-altering experiences in a macro aspect with mushrooms, right? And that's not just like a fluke. It's not like, some person just like is like, and you have a terrible trip, and you're a good trip. You know what I mean? So there's definitely more to it than that.
For sure. Yeah. I think,
And if anyone's listening who happens to have tried psilocybin mushrooms, the likelihood that you're going to have a bad trip is pretty low, in my opinion. And I would definitely veer on the side of not being scared of anything and coming at it from a place of safety. There's many other psychedelics that are going to be much more intense, much scarier. Mushrooms come from the earth. They're very grounding. They're very earthy. They're very giggly. They're very gentle. There are some potent strains out there, but for the most part, you might have a bit of an ass whooping sometimes, but you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, for me,
definitely.
the set for me has always been outside. I always feel like, barefoot, attached to the ground, in nature. You just get to like really tap into the earth's energy. It's always been what it's been about for me. I've never really been a proponent of being inside or like attached to computers or anything like that. It's always been about the connection to the outside world. And I think that for someone's in their first time, usually, for our rules when we were kids, younger, and I usually for someone who's done it for the first time, I'm like, find someone who like has either not done it before with you and like be outside. It's like who you're with exactly, and like just be outside somewhere. It's usually, if you have those two things lined up and you're in a good mindset, like Max said, you're usually pretty good to go, as long as you don't overdose yourself.
Yeah. You're making me come up with all these stories. I remember all these stories now as you're sharing. I'm like, oh yeah, that one time. I mean, one of my most amazing trips ever was kind of what you were just describing. It's outside with me and my buddy on a backpacking trip, and I'm just literally sitting in a meadow on a bunch of mushrooms, and I watch probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 deer just graze the meadow for like 3 hours.
Wow.
Just like 100 feet, just chilling, watching it. So anyways, you spark that memory because that's, you're with a friend,
Mm-hmm.
you're outside, you have your place, you have your home base,
Yep.
You have nowhere to go, nothing to worry about, and you're just watching nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's some of the best times ever. I think you brought up a good point. Being somewhere familiar can help too, because when you do, that veil kind of crosses in front of your eyes and it starts to shift your perception of reality. Being somewhere where you've been before, you have a sense of familiarity is really nice to kind of anchor you a little bit, because you're like, oh, I know where I'm at. Like you said, I've got a home base. Like I feel comfortable where I am, so that I can enjoy this heightened experience around me without this sense of feeling lost, both kind of in your mind and also literally where you are.
Yeah.
I think something I was listening to recently where this individual was talking about how, rather than having like a psychedelic experience, it's like mushrooms are allowing you to have this human experience. So like, yes, it is psychedelic, but it's ultimately like it's just something that you can experience and you can perceive and you can see the world in a completely different way than you have ever experienced before, obviously on the macro level. And yeah, it just you're able to just experience something like a different form of reality. And I think that can just be a really unbelievably influential and positive experience for people in their lives. And I think whether it's from, anecdotal or human testimony or lots of, now scientific, research that's coming out that is supporting that, this is a really viable avenue to chase down if you want to try and, I think expand your mind is the most like cliche thing, but really like experiences I've had, like I would say have changed my sense of humor, have changed the way I can just like look at a tree, like bellowing in the wind and just know how I've seen that bellow in the wind when I was like unbelievably like high on psilocybin, and just this different level of appreciation and understanding for the world. And also just thinking outside of the box. Like when you put yourself in a state where your mind is just thinking so differently and perceiving things so differently, I think like back to just empathizing with other human beings, like trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, trying to think differently. These are all things that just on everyday life, I think you can achieve these benefits, from positive experiences with mushrooms. And yeah, I just, part of me, it's too reductionist, but part of me just thinks like if you are not doing magic mushrooms, you're doing a disservice to yourself, because there's just this thing you just haven't experienced this part of like, of living, that it's right there. It's so easy. Anybody can go out and do this in a really safe and healthy way. And it's just this total different reality that you can experience for like $5.
And tuning back into that microdosing size of things and intention is, we can do this every day, not every day, but the microdosing protocol is 4 days on, 3 days off, and and the afterglow hangs out with you for a couple of days. So basically, if you're on a good protocol, then you're able to have this open heart, have more lightheartedness of you, have more humor, have more laughter, love, connection, and that could be a part of your day to day. And although I don't think we should use plant medicine as a crutch to always have that, the utilization of this plant medicine and of psilocybin specifically can help you integrate and have that as your new baseline. And so, yeah, you're spot on. Like as far as you're doing a disservice to yourself, and to each their own who don't want to do this, but opening up your heart and feeling more empathy for others and finding more love and connection with one small capsule a day, in comparison to the other garbage we put into our body, like we keep doing a lot of good for all of us.
Yeah. You bring up multiple good points. I think I want to circle back real quick to Max and what you just said about empathy. This was a huge thing for me and psilocybin. When I was younger, I was labeled as arrogant. I definitely was very self-centered. I was the oldest child. I was very much just kind of my reality against the world, and no one. I didn't relate to people. I compared everybody else to my own experiences. Couldn't understand why someone didn't feel the same, or why someone, wasn't doing the thing the way I wanted them to do, or the way I would have done it. And psilocybin and some other hallucinogenics really opened that door for me. And I remember just standing on the top of this pile of rocks in Joshua Tree with my good buddy, and just having this prolific experience and this opening of my mind. And I just saw everybody in the world for who they were, and that was the same as me. I saw everyone as that same energetic spirit, and that everybody was going through the same life together, and that everyone has their own personal stories. But in the end, I could be that person. I could be going through that person's exact life, and it's not going that way. But it's just the connection to everybody is really what blew me away, and has completely changed my life. And I think that my life would have been far, far worse if I had not made that realization, just very isolated and cut off. So yeah, it's really, really cool part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really well said, Kyle. And definitely I've experienced similar things. I'm sure, Eric, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe with interconnectedness and feeling that empathy and stuff to other people. But back to that microdosing, and talking about doses and the cycle you were using. I was just kind of, for myself, I think of the pharmaceutical industry, and I think there's a lot of great things out of the pharmaceutical industry, and there's a lot of bad things. Just like anything, there's nuance to a lot of things. But I do think it's really interesting, particularly in the culture we have here in North America, where it's so easy to get prescriptions for drugs. It's so easy to just take drugs, and a lot of the time, if you actually look at studies or you dive deep enough into this, whether it's acetaminophen or SSRIs for depression, or you could even look at Xanax, OxyContin. We can just keep going. The list is on. A lot of people don't really have any second thought at taking any of those. It's pharmaceutical. Oh, my doctor prescribed it. It's got to be good. Kind of thought process. So for me, I find it's really interesting when you talk to certain people about the aspect of mushrooms, where it's an illegal substance, right? And so for me, I find that to be quite hypocritical. And I think there's a lot of plant-based illegal substances that are proven time and time again to actually be, much healthier, much safer, and to actually be able to have the proponents or the benefits of certain things. For example, there's lots of studies that talk about, the antidepressant effect of psilocybin. That's very well studied. There's nothing fringe about it in any way, right? But yet, if you talk to somebody about, hey, your doctor said take this SSRI, or Eric says take this microdose of magic mushrooms, we could guess what the majority of people in North America might, gravitate towards too, right? Statistically, at least. So I was wondering, what your thoughts on that are, Eric, from the pharmaceutical aspect and the aspect of mushrooms being technically this illicit or illegal substance.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, but I feel like we should pharmaceutical world and the naturopathic world and the natural medicine should come together in some right. And I have a very strong opinion about SSRIs. Very anti, but they work well for a small percentage of population, more so than natural remedies or other remedies. So there's a percentage that you fit into, that you should be doing this, that's going to be best for the healing of this person. But 80%, 90%, the majority really has a lot more options than the one pill that, is given to you by the pharmaceutical industry. So, yeah, long answer long is I would like to see everyone do the natural route over anything else. But there's going to be a small percentage that pharmaceuticals are more effective for that person's healing for X, Y, and Z reasons. And And I want at the end of the day, what is it? I don't know what it's called, but it's do no harm. It's like that's ultimately do no harm and help people. And that really is should be the approach. What's best for this person? My body and this physiology is different than other people, and what works for me is going to be different, and so on and so forth. But I mean, I would love to see plant medicines be the mainstream, right? And the go-to first. And, if we look to cancer and the dying, what's that called? Terminally ill. Psilocybin has insane benefits for eliminating near-death anxiety. Ayahuasca has a lot of amazing benefits for near-death to cancer. And there's many other, RSO, what's that called? Rick Simpson oil. Yeah, that has a lot to do with healing cancer and tumor growth. And so there's a lot of modalities that plant medicine can do that has a lot of healing powers. And we need to just, not that it needs to be mainstream, but it needs to be a part of the arsenal of how we help people.
Yeah, it seems like you're kind of on the path for making that happen. Where do you see the future for legality and kind of where we're moving in the United States, at least, for kind of this to manifest itself and be more available to the public?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I was more well versed in the what's up and coming. I know MAPS is doing a lot of studies. John Hopkins is doing a lot of studies, and the research and the money behind it is almost doubling every year. And so my intuition, completely non, data oriented, is we're probably looking at like 5 years, if not less, for a decriminalization of psilocybin specifically, maybe faster. The Sierra Psychedelic Society is doing a lot of good things here locally. And there's Decriminalize Nevada, which focuses on entheogenic plants, entheogens. And so there's a lot of good legislative and a good movement and momentum behind these medicines as healing modalities. And yeah, I'm thinking like, what are we in? We're in 22. 2 years, 3 years. That might be fast, but it's going to be around there, I feel like. And I would like to see this be a mainstream part of society.
When you say it's going to be decriminalized, would that mean that after it's decriminalized nationally, that means it would be upon the states to choose whether they want to take that either just medicinally or also recreationally? Is that like back to the states at that point?
Yeah, I believe it is actually. Yeah, I think it is because...
Isn't in Oregon, it's already decriminalized, isn't it? Oregon and Washington?
And that's the example I was going to try to piggyback on was I wonder if it's still federally illegal in Oregon, but I don't think it is.
Huh.
I think it was like a full-blown
just, wow.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. Again, I need to be more versed in the actual legalities of it. I know right now it's very illegal. It's still Schedule 1, which is so dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other conversation of just the scheduling system alone is busted.
Isn't cocaine Schedule 2? It's like a
step down. Yeah.
And shrooms are number 1. It's like, come on.
Yeah. No, it makes no sense. Yeah. And yeah, with Schedule 1 means that it's like highly addictive and highly harmful.
Yeah.
And they have proven that wrong many times over.
Yeah.
I mean, some say that psilocybin is safer than cannabis. I mean, it has less toxic buildup in the body, less toxicity.
You're not smoking anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what's really cool is where we're going with psilocybin, not to derail the convo, but you can look at ingesting raw form. You can look at brewing a tea. There's hot water extract. There's alcohol extract. We're coming out with tinctures now that are completely nausea-free and getting rid of chemicals that upset the stomach. And so we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of like psilocybin as a compound to the point of where it's going to look something completely different than the bag of mushrooms that you have in your hand.
Do you see, when cannabis got legalized, back in the day it was like homegrown, and now it's big company, big money, corporate. A lot of people talk about the fact that there might be chemicals that put into these pre-rolls, and, the way these plants are grown might not be as holistic as they used to be. Do you see something kind of like that happening with psilocybin and mushrooms as legality kind of creeps forward and as big money starts to grab on to monetizing this new drug? And how do you think we as a population can continue to experience psilocybin the way it was meant to be without kind of that darkness entering the scene?
Yeah, that's a great talking point. And I kind of see it as like a graph. So cannabis did the same thing. Cannabis was, like you were describing, very grassroots, homegrown. Big business got it. It went way up here. Everyone thought it was the bee's knees, the best of the best. Now we're on this downswing of cannabis, specifically of people going, oh, this guy grows my medicine for my healing, for my problems. This is what I'm going to buy. I'm not going to support big business doing, pure THC. Like, I need this much THC, this much CBD with this strain. Mm-hmm. So it goes in that curve. And what we're trying to avoid with psilocybin is we're trying to avoid that big business kind of spike. And I don't quite know how we're going to avoid that, but I know the decriminalization movement is really, really passionate about that.
Yeah.
And they don't want to see what they saw with cannabis. And hopefully we can find an avenue in our approach to see how that's going to play out. Because a lot of people, and Oregon's being a good role model right now, because a lot of people fear that the cannabis industry will absolve or gobble up the psilocybin industry. And me personally, I want to keep them separate and have a different approach. I just haven't necessarily created that approach in my head.
My thoughts on that are, so it kind of seems like, especially for your case, mushrooms are more medicinal than they are recreational. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, you could probably blanket that statement to mushrooms versus cannabis. I would say cannabis is probably more recreational than it is medicinal. So maybe the way forward is to not make it recreationally legal, only medicinally, prescribing to you only. The only catch with that is, we're bringing up the topic of gun rights here. If you have a medical marijuana card and you are getting it as a medicine, you can no longer buy a gun because you've been fit as emotionally unstable for the rest of your life. So, are they going to try to do the same thing to people who are getting this medical psilocybin card? And it just sucks that the government is like, all right, we'll give you this, but we're going to take this away from you in exchange.
Yeah.
Because now these enlightened people who are having these big life changes, now they can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. I think that kind of ties back into that question I asked Eric about the hypocrisy of pharmaceuticals, because I think I don't think that would apply to benzodiazepines or lots of other drugs that are just readily that are incredibly powerful drugs that
someone's on
you cannot
Adderall,
operate machinery, you can't do anything, or the complete opposite, an incredibly powerful stimulant that you're taking because of some form of psychological, we could say, issue or neurotransmitter issue in your brain, right? Biological issue. So just the hypocrisy in that is kind of interesting. Back to you could say that, okay, you can't own a gun if you have access to psilocybin or something like that, but then technically you would want that standard to be across the board, and it's not. It tends to just be hyper focused on plants or drugs that have been associated with kind of the culture revolution in the 60s, larcinogenic acid, psilocybin, marijuana, MDMA, all these drugs, which ironically totally can be used in incredibly therapeutic settings or really, really good medicinal settings for people, right? So I think that's, once again, just back to that scheduling system in the US, just a bad system conflating things and not accurately portraying the potential benefit of things for society.
And I think that's a good overarching focus of the mushrooms is bringing us back to nature. How does nature operate? How does the natural world operate? And I feel like that's a big part of the wisdom that the mushrooms are trying to bring to the human race or the human experience.
Yeah, it's definitely something that as a whole we're losing as well right now with Meta and the metaverse, people plugging even farther in, Second Life, all these things. I think we are we are approaching, this split where you're going to have a group of the population just plug in and enter another world and stay there and let machines kind of keep their bodies alive. And then there's going to be the people that are just like still attached to the earth. And I think it's really, really important for us to try to spread that awareness and attachment to earth and nature, because it's what we're essentially made of. It's where we came from, and taking care of it's the only way we're going to not, pass on the only remnants of humans through robots.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to SSRIs real quick, it's like, do you want to take an SSRI and have all these side effects and not necessarily actually heal you? Or do you want to wake up in the morning, take a microdose, go on a 30-minute walk outside in the sunlight, look into the sun, gather that vitamin D, move your body, get exercise, come back home, have a nice healthy breakfast, and go do about the rest of the day that are going to do beneficial things to you? They're going to help heal those imbalances in your brain or the other reasons on why you're having depressive feelings or emotions. Which route do you want to take? Do you want to take the natural way, or do you want a Band-Aid? And that's what's really frustrating. It's like, let's get back to nature. How did nature do it? How does nature do it?
It gives us, I think the cool thing about nature is it doesn't distract us. It gives us reflection. And I think that's the biggest important part about nature that I get, is a reflection on myself, a reflection on who I am and where I stand in this world, especially with the mountains. It gives you not only the reflection, but the perspective. You get to look down, you get to see how small we are. You get to look back at that city that you live in and realize that nothing matters. It could all just get wiped out in an instant and the earth wouldn't care. And yeah, the mushrooms and being attached to nature, it just gives you that, even just that 30-minute walk in the morning gives you a chance for reflection, reflect on your life, that chance to have a conversation with yourself instead of constantly distracting yourself, being buried in your phone on Instagram, buried on your worries, buried on all these things you have to do. It's so, so important. And I think meditation is just the same thing, giving yourself a chance to have a moment to reflect on your life and breathe.
I think just back to what you were talking about, Eric, in the comparison of SSRIs to a more kind of holistic plant-based approach. I could play devil's advocate and say that if you also did all those other things with an SSRI, that would absolutely 100% increase the effectiveness and your quality in life and everything. But my caveat to that is that I feel, based on kind of like the medical model in society nowadays, is that the pharmaceutical route tends to just ignore all of those other things, right? And so people who are generally pushed to the pharmaceutical route or seek out the pharmaceutical route, they and I mean, this is a large generalization, so to the people out there who don't do this, sorry, but I think that the tendency is that it just, give me my pill, I don't want to change anything, and I just want to do that, right? And so like there needs to be this this mixture of what I think you're talking about, which is that holistic approach, right? It's like, it's not just about taking the compound, it's also about taking these steps that are all associated with this kind of lifestyle change, with this set and setting. Like all these things are a part of that together, and that approach needs to be taken together, because that is 100% like probably the most viable way to live like a healthy, happy, and balanced life, right?
Yeah, I think that this circles back to intention. What is the intention of somebody grabbing an SSRI and just like, the intention is quick fix. The intention is make my problem go away. It's not, the only action you're taking is grabbing that pill and put it in your mouth. To actually solve problems and actually have some self-awareness, it takes work and an intention to make a change. And these things we're talking about, like psilocybin and stuff, it's not going to be a quick fix. You can't just take some mushrooms and then your life is going to be better the next day. It's using this medicine in tandem with intention and actions and a purpose to expand your mind and have that intention to grow as a person. Otherwise, it might not get you anywhere. I mean, like if you go into a mushroom experience with no intention and you're looking to just kind of get a quick fix out of it, you're not going to get anything out of it. Am I correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think something I actually think would be interesting, like as far as like psychedelics, how do you view like psychedelics that have been, we could call synthesized, like synthetics, or a natural psychedelic, some other kind of thing that's come from a lab that might have like the same properties and might be able to provide like similar experience to people. Do you think that there's like this negative connotation, or that there's something bad about it if it's not from the earth, or do you have a different opinion?
My experience with what you're talking about is called research chemicals. And a couple of the examples are like 2,5-I, 2,CB, 2,CE. I had a buddy that was tapped into the Silk Road for a while back when it was in its heyday. And he was just ordering random shit. And I tried a couple of research chemicals, and I'll just describe my experience and the difference between the two real quick, and I'll let Eric answer your question. The 2,5-I that I took, I felt like I was literally in a computer program and I was glitching. Like I would feel my mind go digital, very digital.
Yeah, electronic.
Digital. I felt like I was in like attached to a circuit board or something. It was the most synthetic, crazy feeling I've ever felt in my life. I felt very almost sinister, really attached to the reptilian side of my brain. I felt attached to that ARP complex, that really deep kind of like rudimentary part of my brain, and also just felt like I was like glitching. It felt so crazy. So like between the experience between research chemical and from the ground, stark difference. Not as much enlightenment, very much more of just a superficial experience that your brain goes through. And I didn't really get anything out of it other than just be like, wow, that was fucking weird. I don't want to do that again. And
So to challenge that a little bit, I do know one practitioner. She described how she works with certain clients in this way. And so as kind of a cliche example, someone from Silicon Valley trying to solve a problem or a challenge, overcome a challenge, think of something in a new way. LSD is really good for that, because you're taking the human brain that you're working with and you're using a chemical that is symbiotic with that kind of energy. So that might be a good example of like where LSD might be a better companion for that problem or challenge. But yeah, I think LSD specifically has a lot of good benefits in a lot of good ways in comparison to the natural compounds like mescaline or psilocybin. It just has a different approach, different energy to it. And when I was saying like electric, like if you've had bad acid, you feel electricity going up and down your spine, and it's the bad acid shivers. You'll see people kind of like shiver a little bit, and you're like, that's bad acid. So I always like to kind of focus more on the natural compounds. Mescaline is one of my favorites. I'm actually sitting with Wachuma in the next couple of weeks down in Grass Valley. Amazing. The cacti family, life-changing, amazing. And that's a phenylethamine. And so that's a heart opener. They call it like the native's ecstasy. And so that's just like, that dilates the nervous system, and things just flush through and move through you. And it's a whole nother level of healing, because it just opens you wide open and you could just move things. But so to kind of answer your question, I'm not opposed to one or the other. I think each compound has benefit in very specific ways. And yeah, your intuition kind of like leads that choice, leads that decision. Some people are drawn towards the earth medicines and the natural, and some people vibe really well with LSD. And I'm sure it has a lot to do with how it fits into the receptors and all the hormones, brain hormones, neurotransmitters communicate with everybody. And so, yeah, there's a lot of pieces there.
Everybody's kind of wired differently too. So yeah, you definitely could have some people that are wired more towards one experience or the other.
Yeah,
totally. So I guess a question here would be, Eric, what would you have to say to someone who is listening to this podcast, doesn't really have much of an experience with any type of psychedelics or anything, and they're interested in getting into microdosing? What would you say to that person?
Do it.
Call me.
Yeah. So microdosing specifically is really powerful for everybody. And why I like starting out there with everybody is we could all eat a small amount of mushrooms, a microdose, and it's a safe entryway to it. It's not like we're going out there and saying, hey, go eat 4 grams of mushrooms. That's a completely different conversation. So people who are looking to get into microdosing know the strain, research the strain, have a really good scale, and weigh it out and set your intention and have a good day with it and see how you feel. And start smaller, work your way up, find the dose that works for you. I like 100 milligrams on days that I'm more busy, more things to do. 200 milligrams are really good to open me up, open my heart, find some more humor in life. And then 0.3, I really like for like movement. If I'm going to do juggling or climbing or working out, some sort of movement day where it's not really work related, it's outside, backpacking, hiking, walking. That's more my movement dose. And then other than that, just, know what strain it is. That's a big part of it, I feel like.
Is there a resource or a tool that you can direct people to kind of understand how to do that? Because in my experience, I get what I get, and I have no way of understanding what it is, because most of the time the people giving it to me don't know either.
Good point. And I'm really passionate about really creating more education around the strains and understanding that strain-specific healing is going to be the future of psilocybin, I feel like. So I think I can say this properly. I think it's called Psilopedia, kind of like encyclopedia. Yeah, you got that?
Yeah,
and then Psilo, you got that. So Psilopedia is a website, and it has a database of all the strains available. And you can literally go through and look at all the different cubensis strains and find which strain you either have or bought or are looking for.
Are you going to be able to visually decipher the way they look when they're dried?
No, you're going to have to know yes and no.
Okay.
There's some distinguishing things, but for the most part, the person's got to tell you.
Got to tell you. Got it.
Yeah.
Listen to that. People who are growing mushrooms know which strain you're growing.
Seriously.
Educate.
Yeah. Educate, because it's a big difference. There's a lot of big differences in strains these days, and they're going to get more diverse and wider array of information. And we have to, as part of the awakening and the movement, we're going to bring education to the platform as well too. I hope so.
Now, I think we talked about this a little bit. THC has had its kind of branch off of CBD. Do you feel that there is a CBD to psilocybin? And if so, what role does it play?
Great question. So that's going to be more, the one I know of is baeocystin. There's psilocybin, psilocin, and baeocystin. And then there's a couple other compounds. And so when you talk about like the CBD of psilocybin, I'm not sure if I would say, it's going to be one of those compounds. I would also say like the baeocystin and the other compounds are kind of like the terpenes of THC. Gotcha. So they bring the personality of it. And so I know we're going in that direction, and myself needs to be more well-versed in that. And I hope that we all become more well-versed in that. But yeah, long answer long is yes, there are compounds relatively close to that kind of like description and pairing, because it's all symbiotic. That's nature. Nature works in symbiotic ways. SSRI is one thing that does one action, and it creates a lot of other garbage in the body. Nature, symbiotic, and it works with the system as a whole. So CBD and THC work really well together. That's why it's annoying to have big business separate THC and CBD, because you're taking away from nature. So hopefully we can do this differently with psilocybin and understand which compounds work symbiotically together.
This podcast was created out of our accidents. We went through some serious trauma. You at the beginning of this podcast talked a little bit about kind of working through some emotional stuff as well. I just kind of, we do have some audience, like people in our audience that have either just gone through an accident, they are dealing with an injury, they're dealing with that lack of mobility, that big mental strain, and all this stuff that Max and I have been talking about for the last couple of weeks. How do you feel psilocybin plays a role in dealing with trauma? And kind of how can someone use psilocybin to help with the situation they're in? Whether it's like immediate or long lasting.
Yeah, somatics. So using trauma as an example, whether it be physical, emotional, really bad sexual trauma, any sort of trauma from childhood, it is stored in the body in some sort of physical way. So you have to somatically release that. And so, like every mushroom journey, I always begin with like it's not Tai Chi. It's oh no, I'm gonna miss it. But it's called chaos, and you move and shake, and it somatically releases things in the body. So to answer your question, if you have an underlying issue and there's something going on and it's stored and stuck in the body, psilocybin, in my opinion, can open that up, whether it be the energy channels or the intention or the spiritual energy of it. And we can move through that with movement or our mind-body connection, which is heightened, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a vague answer, but it's possible, and it can help with that, such as ankle injuries. Mm-hmm. If we look at ankle injuries, how has that traumatic event of that really gnarly, jacked up ankle from that boulder fall, how is that sitting in the body? And how can we use the medicine to work through that stuck energy? And whether it's somatic releases or mind-body connection or meditations,
driving awareness to the area.
Yeah. So I feel like if the medicine heightens that awareness and opens us up to these possibilities, opens up this cross communication of the brain, and we become more turned on, then our intention and our power has become heightened as well. And then you can heal how you want to heal, whether that's energetically or physically or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, as an example, like I've been in mushroom journeys before where I'm literally just convulsing and shaking and like extreme amounts to move the energy, to shake the energy off of my body from, however that feels to you. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's literally just convulsing and shaking. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You should look up like somatic releases and, how energy and emotions get stuck in the body. Mm-hmm. And the psilocybin can open us up to that, and we could shake it off.
Do you have any example with kind of where certain parts of trauma manifest themselves within the body? Is there like a pattern, or is it individual?
Yeah, that one I would need to be more versed in, but like knees, hips, stomach stuff. Psoas is a big one. Mm-hmm. Psoas is a big emotional center. And I'm sure there's a lot more areas of like where the most kind of tension is held. Mm-hmm. I feel like the psoas is a gnarly one. That's a big one.
Yeah, I got a big problem.
Yeah. But if you dive into the study of somatics and where the emotions are held, there's maps. Why your knees hurt, why your hips hurt, why your organs are off, why this and that. And so you can really pinpoint it, and you can use the medicine to heal these traumas and move through spots that are stuck. Mm-hmm. I've also done dozens of times where you're in this massive psilocybin journey and you're just moving energy. Mm-hmm. And you're just like finding spots on your body. And you're like, why does that feel that way? Let me work through this energy. And you can feel it because everything's heightened.
Yeah, I think it's a great example. I think that, not only is there this physical release and awareness you can drive, but, through these hard injuries and stuff, trying to stay positive, trying to stay distracted from everything, I think it might give you a chance to digest the reality of the situation you're in, and might give you some clarity and some answers in terms of just kind of dealing with the stress and the negativity that just comes along with a pretty traumatic injury.
And going back to the beginning of the podcast, was what story did that injury create, and what now new story are you living off of? Are you, now do you have a busted ankle for the rest of your life, and you're like, oh, I'm going to walk with a limp for the rest of your life? Well, if you're going to say that, then that's going to be your story. That's going to be your reality. But what if you can manifest and set an intention into that healing, that now this is becoming my superpower and I could be stronger from this now and move forward in that energy, then that's going to get you a whole another outcome.
I think that a statement that comes to mind here with that that power of intention and creating your own story, is I'd rather set the bar really high and be wrong than set the bar low and be right.
Yeah.
I want to set the bar high. I want to expect magic and maybe come up just a little bit short to reality.
Yeah.
Rather than, just accepting that my life is shit and then manifesting that every single day of my life.
Yeah. Whether what's it, you say you can or you can't, you're right.
You're right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I think that was a great little circle back. I'm cool to call it there.
I think that's a perfect place to kind of tie things off here.
Yeah.
I think for sure.
Awesome.
Eric, I just want to say, man, it has been such an absolute pleasure to talk with you and to meet with you. And I think just the energy and the positivity, I'm not there in the room with you guys.
I feel like I'm yelling in the mic.
No, you just have this unbelievably great positive vibe and this great energy. And I really appreciated the conversation and, listening and learning from you. And I appreciate you taking your valuable time to come here and talk with us today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, one thing I just want to see in the future is just accessibility to the medicine, and those who need it have access to it, and it can help them, and we can get it to them in the right way and the safe way. And we all need healing, and that looks different for all of us, but it'd be cool for all of us to help everyone else out and figure out what that healing is and give it to everybody.
Awesome. Great message. Yeah, guys. Thanks, Max, again for being with us. Eric, thanks so much for coming on. I'm glad we met at the climbing gym and looking forward to continuing hanging out and go bowling maybe sometime.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you guys got to send me some pictures if you go bowling together. I'll be so stoked.
Oh man, yeah. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in today. Today was a little a brand new topic for us here. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know by commenting on our new Instagram page. Follow us along there for some sound bites of future episodes. Please feel free to DM us, guys. We've had some people reach out and we really, really love it. We love hearing from you. We love hearing the feedback. This whole podcast was to try to bring us all closer together and spread some awareness about just injuries and climbing and this whole life of this new climbing majority that people are experiencing. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So give us a shout. If you have any questions for Eric, I can forward it to him as well. We'll put his contact information in the description. If you are local here in Reno, he'll be able to service you. And other than that, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We hope you have an awesome day.